If they do well, then awesome.
Yep, me too, my friend. Me too. All right. Just notify some people we should be live. And once again, it seems like stuff's not working. All right, there we go. Camera's live now. What up, people at home? What up? I'm going to tell people.
Do you see I bought like 30 of these
No,
downstairs?
what is it?
They're just like RX, like Life Aid is a more of like a CrossFit orientated, but they do a lot of endurance. But it's just a low calorie post exercise recovery drink.
Okay. I always think those things are bullshit, but
yeah, I looked. I guess what I liked about buying it. So this is literally the reason is that I got it at a cost that I'm like, okay, I'll be willing to pay $3 for like a ready-made drink. It's got creatine, which I normally just skimp out on adding to my drinks because I just forget.
Too lazy. Yeah.
And it's got like vitamins in that. So, and I like the taste. So I did taste it at the gym the other day. I was like, this is a pretty good taste. So
Yeah, good.
But you're right. So 24 cans of this normally is $100 plus shipping, right? So now these cost like $5 if you buy them on their own. So 24 of them would be $120. So normally you could buy them for $100, but they did have a discount at the moment where it's like $75 plus shipping. So I was like, okay, that works out at whatever it was, $3.80 or something.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, cool. I'll do that. But I actually know someone. And then after I purchased them, I realized that I know someone who wholesales sells this.
No,
and I was like, of course.
Yeah.
And I messaged him and I was like, hey, next time could I just go through you? And he's like, yeah, of course. I was like, man.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's annoying.
Yep. Absolutely.
Gotta be clear. Don't click on bad things. I don't have the clickable link. Good. Wonder if you can view yourself. You can.
This too shall pass, Karen. Okay. Next time, could I just go through?
This too shall pass. Been reading some Greek philosophy there, young one.
This too shall pass. I wonder where the Greek philosophers got their stuff from.
Oh,
like the Sumatrans.
Yeah, I'm sure there was. You could keep tracing it back.
Like, could you imagine that? Say Marcus Aurelius, even though he didn't really particularly write it, but he was like, everyone around that age was like, oh yeah, you've got to read this or hear the story from the XXX culture from 2,000 years ago who thought these wonderful things.
XXS Tentacion.
Yeah,
that's where all
XXX Tentacion
is derived from.
Yeah.
All right, just about to do the last post, and then we'll get into the
crack on
meat
the way.
And bones of today. Hello to everyone in the chat. I'll put a message in there in a second.
How's your German going, by the way?
Pretty good, man. I'm pretty happy with the progress I'm making. Yeah, I'm able to think of things relatively quickly, but then the real test will be creating my own sentences and stuff like that. I haven't done much of that yet.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then actually, chatting with people. So that's
That's
the next step.
Bit, yep.
Yeah. Okay, tag that, push that. Can close that down. Can close that one down. I see Mr. Broadshoulders in the chat. What up, Mr. Broadshoulders?
Broadshoulders. Welcome in, sir. Ooh, baby, I love your way every day. Yeah.
He won't let the Chuck's beanie thing go.
He's still putting it in.
He's still putting it in.
Damn. That dude won't rest. Dude, you got to throw that away.
Nah. I'll double down on it. Actually, some girl today, so I was wearing an Argentinian shirt whilst exercising.
Yeah.
And she just came up and was like, oh, are you from Argentina? Well, and she didn't even say it to me. She said it to Brendan. No, she asked, are you all from Argentina? Because we were in a big group. And Brendan goes, no. And then she just kind of looks at him. And I'm like, hablo español si quieres hablar. Like, I speak Spanish if you want to speak. And she obviously didn't.
Nice.
And then it was just like, what was your purpose? What were you going to do if we had said
If the answer was yes, was it going to be like, cool?
Yeah, I honestly have no idea what they were.
Interesting.
Yeah, so there's strange people out there, Juan.
Yeah.
That's all I can say.
Yeah, sometimes you question what's the purpose of that.
Yeah, for sure. All right. It looks like we're all ready and raring everywhere, so I'm going to kick us off. Here we go. Mortals. Yeah, welcome everyone to another episode of the Mere Mortals Musing Sessions. You have Kyron here on this side of the microphone.
You're Juan on the other side of the mic.
And we are in our studio doing it live. So we go live every week. Maybe some changes coming to that soon, but we'll keep you more informed as we get closer to that. But this will be the first little hint that something might be changing. And a musing session is where we dive deep into a topic, so more on the deep side of the conversations, a little bit of a lighthearted touch. And today I was the one who came up with the topic of philosophy books.
Correct.
And you'll know this because it was if you've read any of or seen any of our goals setting over the last year, you'll notice I was reading quite a few of them down. So
Correct.
I wanted, honestly, I think I just wanted to moan.
You wanted to space to mind.
I wanted to rant. I wanted to, we're in our safe space here in our little studio. And yeah, you know what? I'm just going to dive straight into...
So why the moan?
I've just found my last year's experience was disappointing. I think that's
let's set the baseline for people. What was your expectation going in for that year?
Yeah. Okay. So
what was the expectation?
And what do I kind of define a philosophy book as?
Yep.
So I'd read books that you'd probably consider philosophy over the years, especially a lot of the Stoic type thoughts. So Meditations by Aurelius, stuff by
Seneca,
Epictetus and Seneca. Yep. So I had previously gotten a fair bit of exposure to that sort of thing. But I'd always just been like, man, I really want to know, like, what do the greatest thinkers sort of think? What's reality actually like? What is, am I missing something? Like, I feel like I've kind of been skirting away and just not particularly drawn to, like, the big names, Nietzsche, Kierkegaard, Heidegger, Kant, when you think of philosopher.
Well, I was going to use it as well. Here's a definition of philosopher, which is horrible. A philosopher is someone who practices philosophy.
Yeah,
like that. I don't like that. But
what's the wiki
when it talks through of the philosophers, it talks about the term philosopher actually comes from ancient Greek. So I guess perhaps that's where he began the idea of the philosopher. Wikipedia has a list of philosophers, so
yeah, that's good.
Help me up. Do you want me to read a couple of those?
Quickly read out what Wikipedia says is who are philosophers.
Okay, let's have a quick look because I close it down.
Because I want to know if my
your idea of them,
or are philosophers people like, I don't know, kind of famous authors and things like that. And not every philosopher has a book, but typically that's where we know of them because there wasn't audios from the 1600s and 1200s and 300 BC and that sort of thing. Yeah,
absolutely. Now, Wiki actually isn't super helpful because the list of philosophers has like lots of intricate lists within each of them. So I'm just going to grab, say, list of philosophers by mind or by science, or by language or by religion.
So I just wrote philosophers, and what comes up from Google is Plato, Socrates, Aristotle, Kant, Nietzsche, David Hume, Descartes, Ludwig Wittgenstein, Confucius, John Locke, Bertrand Russell, Karl Marx, Kierkegaard, Rousseau, John Stuart Mill, Epicurus, blah, 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 Pythagoras, like the list goes on and on. So I hadn't read really any of those apart from the Greek sort of ones of those. And I had read one or two things of...
Okay, so your idea going in was...
So I just generally had this idea that I'm missing out on a whole branch of literature that I think... would be hard. I expected it to be hard, but I also expected it to have a lot of wisdom contained. Sure. Essentially, that was what I was thinking. It was like, I want to find some wisdom.
There's a reason why they're noted as being great reads or great thinkers, and so you want to try to extrapolate that information to you.
Yeah.
Okay,
cool. So I said,
it's a good aim. It's a good aim.
I said to myself that this last year, all right, I want to read 6 philosophy books, and
which I wouldn't have thought is very audacious. I think that's pretty straightforward. Now, this is me not knowing and maybe for other mere mortalites, just how deep they might get, just how hard they might be to read, how thick they actually are.
I was expecting thick books. I was thinking, okay, this will take me 2 months to read. Potentially for each one of these, because they'll probably be 600 pages. And a few of the ones that I have read are that length. So basically I've pretty much done that goal with a kind of month to spare, and I haven't enjoyed it. It's been a real kind of just disappointment is what I said, and so I've got a couple of things here that I wanted to bring up. So one of these was what I was expecting. So my expectations coming into it, and I was expecting things like well-reasoned arguments, maybe clearly defined theses with proofs of some kind, essentially a new way of thinking about morals, ethics, and truth. That was pretty much what I was expecting coming in. Yep. And I instead just got things that I didn't really understand and it was one of those ones where it was like, am I just stupid and I don't get these things, or are they intentionally obscure? Yeah. Well, this is the thing. It
could be both. This could be both.
Yeah. And so an example of this would be Beyond Good and Evil by Nietzsche.
Yep.
And I'll bring up even on the screen so we can have a little look-see at what the books I'm particularly talking about. So Beyond Good and Evil by Friedrich Nietzsche. And it was a series of different, I suppose, like mini paragraphs, and most of them were just him bitching about other philosophers. And I just went, how is this the best of what there is?
Yeah.
Now, look, he put out a bunch of different books. So, I could have just gotten a crap one, but this was the one people recommended.
Exactly.
To try
that one was called out
as kind of an introduction to Nietzsche. This is the way to go. And yeah, sure enough, like he's got that amazing quote, which I love. I looked into the abyss, and the abyss looked back into me. That was contained within the book. But what was surrounding that, that sort of quote, I thought, man, there's going to be some sort of epic tale or some sort of, really,
that brings that together. Like that might have been like the core sentence or the core couple of words, but it probably brings about 100 pages worth of conversation as to why that sort of quaint view.
It was kind of a standalone thing, just chucked out there. So that was one of the ones where I was starting to go, okay, well, the one I'd read previous to that was Martin Heidegger's The Question Concerning Technology. And this was where I really went, okay, what the fuck? This is truly incomprehensible. This book makes absolutely no sense. It is closer to poetry than it is to any well-reasoned arguments. Yes, it's translated from the German, but I had kind of side notes explaining, okay, this is a word that he kind of created in German to fit for this thing. And I actually wanted to read out a recent comment that we got on one of the on that actual book review, because I think that can kind of be a touching point where you can maybe explain some things as well, or we'll have a look at this. So this was a comment by Victor Serge on the book reviews, and I'm just going to bring this up quickly now. Ding, 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 ding. Got to go to studio. And so he said, I'm having a hard time understanding why people without the background in philosophy read works that are aimed at academic philosophers. I'm referring to Heidegger. Obviously, without any previous knowledge of the philosophical terminology in Heidegger's work, it will be impossible to go through the arguments he makes. But for a philosophy student, it is a philosophical essay with a coherent argument and a debatable conclusion. So I guess I thought that was a really great comment. Thank you very much, Mr. Victor Serge. And I wanted to, I guess, draw from that. What are your thoughts on should philosophy, when you think of philosophy in a philosophy book, do you think it should be readable just as a standalone kind of piece on its own? Or is it, like he was saying, and you actually need to do a liberal arts degree to be able to understand this kind of work?
Yeah. Well, let's not be super critical on like, oh, you need a liberal arts degree for it. At least my interpretation is of a philosopher and philosophy, and what makes me think what makes someone so great at being a philosopher would be the ability to explain something to such a simple, clear, precise degree that is what makes him great. So it's I would almost see that the ability for someone to describe Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, that sort of theme and idea in a really super brilliant crystallized way, and they sort of spun it towards philosophy, I'd be like, well, that's a great philosopher if you can explain it into a really simple thing. For me,
So the Bitcoin Standard by Safety Namous, I read that. He did that, but I wouldn't consider that a philosophy book per se.
I'm sorry, and I think what I meant by that is if that book had gone really deep into philosophy of perhaps the idea of money and the thinking of money and the movement to digitization, and it's really just for us it's just the spectrum of ideas that we incorporate, something like that, but it was described in a really simple and clear way, I would say, okay, well, that's a great piece of philosophy, right?
Okay, yeah.
I for some reason can't see it, me personally, going, okay, if this piece of work was written in such a way that it is for an academic purpose of abstraction, and if you're just a general reader, you're not picking up because you have all these nuances. I wouldn't say that is a great piece of philosophy. I'd go, okay, well, that's a great academic piece, but philosophy to me should be almost understood broadly and be able to give anybody clarity into the topic that you're trying to portray. So I would say no. I would go against that particular comment and say, okay, well, then that's not philosophy then. That's an academic paper. You might as well be writing an academic paper. And then even beyond that, is it failing then to do that appropriately if people are having to do that and struggle to read it? So
yeah. So a kind of similarity to this is when I think of who's the best scientists, who's the best people, and that's kind of getting into philosophy in a way. That most people would agree it's people like Richard Feynman, Einstein, the people who could take these incredibly complex things and then distill them so that kind of everyone could understand.
Sure.
And there was this guy, I remember reading this on the internet, so I'm not, one, it's probably not going to be 100% accurate, and two, my memory was kind of hazy because it was from probably 10 plus years ago.
Okay.
And there was, I believe, the 7 millennial problems, something like that.
7 millennium problems that they were giving $1 million each.
Something like
solved,
that, yeah. And there was a Japanese guy who claimed to solve one of them. And I think it was something about like AB conjecture or something like that, but could be wrong on that. And, he basically just published on the internet, I solved it. And it was this incredibly complex thing, hundreds of pages of detailed notes of, him creating these own theories, matrices and structures, and then applying that to this, and then, kind of doubling, he's creating his own. So imagine kind of like creating calculus and then being like, all right,
prove that because this is it. Yeah.
It's proven because I created this calculus and this works because of, the calculus itself works because it, conforms to these basic principles of whatever. And I remember the reaction to this was, he published it, but then didn't do any groundwork of explaining, this particular section of it or this particular section, which is apparently what people who when they create a new proof or something like that, they go on a kind of, the scientist version of a rock star around the world tour.
Yeah, okay.
Except, way less groupies.
I was going to say,
less, I mean, I assume.
Who knows? You never know the secret lives of the scientists. Perhaps it's wilder than we think.
Who knows? I mean, scientists were the ones who invented LSD and things like that.
So. Yeah, that's true.
But apparently that's what you meant to do. You meant to go around and then, really detail and explain particular sections and try and make it as
Which makes sense.
understandable to other people. But he didn't do this. And so people were kind of being like, this is, maybe it works, but no one can understand it. So
does it really work?
Is this actually, the work of a genius, top of his field, and it's going to provide, insights into the nature of reality because you've solved this very complex problem? Or is it just, kind of mental masturbation and no one's going to be able to use this because you've created something so complex and you're not willing to take the effort to distill it down into something that's kind of usable.
Yeah, and I think it starts bridging the gap of, and I don't know when we were going to touch onto this, but almost like that effective philosophy.
We're touching upon it right now.
Effective philosophy, active philosophy, where I go, okay, let's go again to an example of Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. Now, I haven't read the book, but I have read enough, and I guess I should give my background. I don't think I've ever read any philosophy books.
That was going to be a question I was going
I've never read any philosophy books, but I have read a lot of books which reference philosophy books, and obviously sort of building on the, on the shoulders of giants in a way. And I prefer to consume what I would say is philosophical ideas and creative plays or examples of stories, more so along the lines of other people dissecting, finding the information, presenting it in an even more concise way, and that's how I like to consume it. So obviously, key example that I'm reading right now, Ryan Holiday with Ego is the Enemy and Obstacle is the Way. He's pulling in this is exactly how he structures all of his chapters. I'm assuming the next book I'm about to read also is exactly the same way. Is it starts with a quote, then into a story, then why that story and the quote fit into the philosophy, and how it applies to your life, like very specifically your life, ends back on the story, that's it, and each chapter is about 5 to 6 pages. So it's very applicable, and it's very, I guess, orientated towards effective philosophy, but it's pulling in lots of different places of philosophy and quotes. So of course it brings Nietzsche, it brings Marcus Aurelius, it brings like all these other places. So I'll go, that's the way I like to consume my philosophy, in that other people are dissecting it. But to this point of the effective philosophy, I go, okay, for me, that example where this thing is put forward as a, hey, this is my piece of work, and maybe it's orientated for just these particular humans, or in that example, nobody can understand. I almost go, okay, is it any different to just you making up your own random language and saying like, here's a great philosophical piece because I've merged English with Hindi with like barking dogs, and this is my new language. Now you could go, wow, he went really deep into language, created something. But then on the other end, I go, okay, but this is not useful. Like, this is not applicable to anything. Where, like, I haven't read the book Meditations, but I know that a lot of Meditations was just a man writing into a diary, and a lot of the information that you sort of get from that is, wow, this was a person who was basically probably the most powerful person in the world at that time, and he's writing a lot of things which are applicable to individuals like you and me and all the other mere mortalites. So I go, okay, there's connection, there's applicability, there's things that you can take out of that and go, okay, this is real philosophy that you can see playing day to day. Whereas those other examples, I go, you might as well just be talking another language or making up your own language. It's just not as, well, at least personally, not as interesting, but secondly, not applicable to my life. And I go, okay, well, that's not great philosophy to me.
Yeah, well, I even wrote down, is it possible that these things are over-analyzing and they're interpreting things that are just not there, or they're not true? It's kind of like, trying to think of a good example of just an exercise in futility. It's just, creating problems for you to then solve them, to feel like you've got the ability, you're actually doing something, when you could just be lying under a tree and not doing anything, and you'd be in exactly the same spot.
But it's even like it might be, and it might be the truth. It might be the reality. But again, it's like the applicability, at least for me, it's the applicability to myself and the reality that at least we experience that is important. So even though what they could be looking into is completely true and valid, I don't see it as being a great piece for me to read and pick up information if it's so out of this world that for me, I'm like, okay, it needs somebody else to go through, dissect it, pull the really key stuff out, and then compare it to stories and that. Okay, I really enjoy that. And kind of an example I was going to say was, today I was listening to Andrew Huberman, and he was talking, there was a particular calculation that you could do about how much water do you need to be drinking roughly when you're working out at particular intensities. And the calculation was, you take your weight in pounds, you divide it by 30, and that's how much ounces of water you should be having every 15 minutes, right? Something to that effect. Which absolutely okay, sure. Let's say
What does that roughly work out to the average
like
person?
3, maybe like 2.5. Well, depends on your weight, but let's just say like 2.5 ounces, 3 ounces of water every 15 minutes, and that I don't know exactly. American people who are listening to this, they're like completely. You understand? For us, I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to just guess. You can look it up if you want quickly.
I will.
But now I read that, like I heard that, and I went, okay, I get the reality of this, and just like someone could be a philosopher or a scientist, you put all this detail too for it. But I go, for me, how much that really applies to my training, where it's my mentality should be more along the lines of just like have a bottle of water and just drink it when you're thirsty. Like just drink and get yourself more to that, as opposed to, I've got to be like really concerned that I'm drinking 450 millimeters of water. How much was it?
So 1 ounce is 28.35 grams. So you said 2.5 every 15 minutes?
Yes.
So that's
So let's say
80 mils.
80 mils, 100 mils, something like that. Right now, I'm not going to be there measuring this out. Now, I get that you can put the science behind it, so I'm going a little bit different to philosophy, but you kind of get the idea of that exact number. Or you could just be like, no, you should just drink a lot of water. And like whatever that is, just drink water and work out. And for me, I'm like, okay, the thing that's probably more valuable is just I should be drinking the water. I don't have to go to that level of complexity to really take out most of the benefits. Like I've taken 90% of the benefits. If you get that to a level, okay, it's those minute percentage that maybe you're going to get. But is it going to be applicable, at least for me? No. And I think that's probably why I've shied away, and I'm even more now shied away from ever reading like any of the philosophy books. Even things like Meditations by Aurelius. I know that Ryan Holiday, even reading his book, he's like, you should go read it from the horse's mouth and get all that information. But again, to me, I go, I feel like for me, great philosophy has been already picked up by most people, like extracted out of those great books and put into other things where they've crafted it together, brought stories, brought other ways where it just feels like it's going to apply more to me. And realistically, the way that you've explained some of these philosophy books, there's no way I would have even finished them. I would have just gotten to a point and gone, all right, I'm not picking up anything here. This is just like me trying to learn. It'd be like picking up a unit of university or something like that. Like I'm just trying to learn something for the sake of learning it, not for the sake that it applies to me. So I go, okay, that backs me away from that sort of philosophy.
Yeah, well, I actually learned something new today, which was, have you heard of Interlingua before? So it's kind of a man-made language. I actually want to look into it a bit more because someone was talking about this on the Podcasting 2.0 Mastodon. And from what I gather, it's kind of like another version of Esperanto, but obviously less successful because I haven't even heard of it before, which is kind of surprising because Esperanto, it's not doing well, people. It's not catching on.
Not catching on.
It really did get to me that the reason that thing wouldn't really work properly because it's that like trying to play with words, and words are hard to play with. Like if you're trying to create a language, like it's not like one person can sit down and write from start to finish. Okay, for this concept, I want this word. I want the grammar to be going this way. We'll eliminate any of the annoying stuff in English, such as to do something, and I have too much, and they all sound like to. Well, that's shit. Let's get rid of that. Things like this, and it really did feel after reading most of these things that they were just playing with words. They were playing with words, and there was nothing. Not that I necessarily need something to take out from it and be able to apply to my real life, that and that sort of thing, which funnily enough Stoic philosophy really does, and I would recommend actually reading Meditations.
Like I was gonna say, like even though I'm saying I won't read it, of what I've heard, at least the Stoic seems to be the most relatable.
It's definitely, and I'll probably get into that in after the Boostagram section. But yeah, there was just something from most of these, and I'll also list out every single book that I read that just made me go, okay, there's word playing, and it's not even word playing, which is interesting in a way. And this is where it's getting into the tricky territory, which is, well, if some people enjoy it and it's interesting. I guess for me it was just the aura that was around it. This is the deepest thinking, the hardest stuff to understand. It's going to get into the true nature of reality, and I didn't come out of most of these thinking, man, I'm closer to the truth, or I'm
Well,
closer to understanding.
Maybe not even that. Not even that. Did you feel like they were close to that true nature of reality?
Well, when I think of how life went for a bunch of these people, it didn't go so great. Niche went insane. I'm pretty sure a bunch of them also had relatively kind of unfulfilling lives when you get to the heart of what their life was like. And
which again, for me, it kind of highlights again the difference between applicability of it and the just speaking it out in theoretical ways. It's different things.
There's an argument to be made that the true nature of reality is depressing and will actually make you go insane.
Maybe
I could believe that, but now we're getting to like third level order thinking, and it's just not helpful anymore.
And before we actually get into the Boostagrams, I was going to say that what I mentioned before about kind of in a joking way, but also it's going to apply a lot that we're just not smart enough, right?
Yeah.
Like most of us mere mortalites, right?
This is
you're not going to be smart enough. Again, these books who, by what people are saying is, the smartest thinkers thinking as deeply as possible and trying to articulate it as well as they can, right? There's going to be a great chance that you just won't know what the shit's going on. You'll just be like, what in the world is this? I have no idea what you're talking about. It's kind of an equivalent of someone coming up to you and just speaking about quantum mechanics, quantum computing, right? And you have no idea about how like base computers work. It just would be, you might as well be hearing another language now. Back to what we're saying with another language. So to the YouTube comment, okay, maybe we're just not smart enough to understand some of these literature pieces that are being put out to really appreciate them deeply. That might also be the case. But then it goes back to my point that I go, well, for me, a great philosopher and maybe a philosophy book or philosophy, whatever you want to say, should be able to be understood by all the mere mortals. Like it should be something that is like, oh, wow, you have now been able to describe, like taken this idea that was just fluttering away in like the highest level you could possibly find it and brought it down to being able to provide that idea information to everybody and share it around. Like I'm like, wow, that's a great philosopher.
Yeah.
But if you're keeping it to like this upper levels where only a handful of humans in the world know it, okay, like you might be the greatest philosopher for 6 people. But for the rest of the world, I don't know how you can claim that you're the great philosopher.
I'd agree with this. I'm going to read out some of the chat comments that we've got going on here, and while Juan's bringing up the Boostagram.
Can do.
Joey says, the rational male, I read that and it spoke about male and female behaviors and biases. Yep. That's kind of close to what I would call, I suppose, the main... that's more like a mainstream philosophy book, and there are actually quite a few others which are kind of on this mainstream section. Just for those who are wondering, one's jumped off to the toilet, but he'll be back in a second. The other sort of books like this, if I had to list some out in particular, would be things like Peter Singer's work. So The Most Good You Can Do. I've read that, Ethics into Action, that sort of thing. Is that philosophy? Maybe, I'm sure there's plenty of books in the philosophy section that are modern day stuff, but I'd put the rational male in that. But it's also, when I imagine philosophy, that's not particularly what I'm imagining. Yeah. And then Peter has another comment here, which was and he was saying I saw he published this, and then you actually went on to the exact same thing, which was high-level philosophers are sometimes incomprehensible, kind of like high-level mathematics is incomprehensible to me. It says just as much about my abilities to learn as it does their ability to teach. And then
that's a good way to describe it, actually.
One says it perfectly. Maybe we just aren't smart enough, which is true. This is definitely possible. This is possible. All right, you want to get into the Boostagrams, my friends?
Absolutely. All right, Boostagram Lounge, folks. All right, let's kick it off with the big cheese. It says, how many sats do I need to send to get an arm wrestle competition between the both of you live on stream? Love the show. Stay handsome. 500 sats sent using Fountain. Well, I will say the big cheese. You would have to send enough Satoshis so that the hospital bill
To
for
pay for my
Karen's shoulder
reconstruction, please.
would be, would have to be able to come back. I actually
And a
remember
little bit more on top.
just thinking of the arm wrestling thing. I remember arm wrestling, like the last time I arm wrestled was at work. There was someone at work who actually challenged me.
Oh, jeez.
And they were a pretty like big Indian guy.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, we'll see how it goes. And it was one of these like arm wrestling, table wobbling type of things. People are watching. And I remember, I don't know, I'm fairly confident that I won. But they were like, oh, no, you didn't win because you like twisted or whatever. And I'm like, nah, go look up the rules. But I would have won. But my shoulder was so sore. Like my shoulder and my humerus bone was so sore. I was like, man, I don't want to do this like ever again. No way. Like just the...
It's a very strange tension movement.
Well, imagine the tension on your rotator cuff.
Yeah, when else are you going to have this kind of locked elbow moving of the shoulder joint? Your shoulder and arm and your shoulder and elbow should be locked, I guess. And it's I don't know. I'm not good at. This is why I'm not good at teaching handstands. I don't know all these bloody words.
The exact way.
It's a very unusual movement that I don't see replicated in any other portion of life. So I'm not surprised that you felt a bit bleh.
But look, I'm going to say the big cheese. I'm going to say 5 million sats. Is probably what's going to cover 5 million sats.
Nice.
You watch. Someone's going to just randomly be like, here's your 5 million. And be like, damn. But we'll do it. I think I'll do it 5 million.
I mean, it's not going to be a great arm wrestle, people. It's not going to end. Unless there's something about levers, because I'm guessing my arms are...
Nah, it's not about... it's not so much about levers. It is definitely just like the leaning of your body.
Yeah,
predominantly.
The other thing is kind of wrists. I know there is kind of like a wrist
like
lock
twisted
that you
in.
can put in. Maybe I'd be okay with that because my wrists are relatively strong.
That's a good point, actually.
Funnily enough, and so who actually was that person? Well, that actually was my brother, the Big Cheese.
The Big Cheese.
I prompted him to send one in.
Good.
And when we measured our wrist, I've got actually like an extra centimeter or a centimeter and a half
compared to Prentice.
Compared to him, yeah.
Damn. Yeah, I don't know. I got fat wrists. I also have fat hands.
Fat hands.
Thank you very much, the Big Cheese.
Thanks,
all right.
Thanks, P.
We've got Rastacalavera.
Nice.
And he says, I'm a hobbyist when it comes to coding. If Raspberry Pis weren't impossible to get, I would suggest you start there and the project page. Correct, they are quite hard to get at the moment. The book Learn Python the Hard Way is a good way to stay focused and learn bit by bit. Once you get a feel for the basics, other resources you find online for other languages will make more sense. As you learn more, you be able to solve your current ideas and explore new ones with more success. Go podcasting.
What's the hand?
Dropping the mic.
Dropping the mic.
So, very good. And that's 1,000 sats sent using Fountain.
Yeah, thanks so much, mate. First of all, does that name ring a bell? I'm
not
sure
sure.
I've seen
That looks like a new one.
So very, very much appreciated, Mr. Rastacalavera. That's very cool that you've boosted in. Basically what I've taken away from all the suggestions and things I've got is Python seems to be the place to start. And
so you're going to go down the back end coding as opposed to front end coding.
I think so. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And so I'd probably start there. And yes, very minor mini projects. I don't have anything in mind of what I particularly want to do. I'll kind of let the mood
let the ideas go through. Very cool. Here's a little quick one from This Is the Future. Turtle shell time. Turtle.
4 turtles. Thank you very much.
11 sat sent using Fountain. Thank you very much. And then we got proud mum of Liam F. We got Karen, my brother. My Chuck's kitchen cloth and fitting my head as well as it ain't fitting my head as well as it used to. Can you point me in the direction of the right store to get the same Chuck's beanies you have? Hugs and kisses, blood.
Thank you, Miss.
That's 500 sats
Miss
Fountain.
Proud Mum of Liam F. Thank you very much for that. Look, if it was in another room, I would go and get it, but it's in my bloody car, so I'm not going to go out and get it to
show it off. Yeah,
I'll get it out so that I wear it for next week though, because it seems to be a hit. How to actually get one? It's probably kind of rare nowadays, to be honest. I got this. It's not even just plain old Australian Chuck's cloth. This is Argentinian
Chuck's cloth. Yeah,
well. It's made its way from across the world.
Well, I've never seen it. I've never seen anybody else wearing it. So I don't see that many people, but I've never seen it.
That is true. But maybe I need to wear it more, and I can get random chicks coming up to me asking me if I'm Argentinian. That's the way to go.
That's the way. Anyways, that's the Boostagrams for this week. Thank you very much, everyone, for sending them through.
Yep, much appreciated. The Value for Value podcast. So we, I guess the show is supported. You know, we've got all sorts of hosting fees and you know upkeep for the bloody lights and tables and cameras and things like that. Every week Juan seems to break something new, or every other week I should.
Every other week.
Yeah, not every week. That's
fortnight.
That's exaggeration.
Fortnight. At least fortnight.
There seems to be something that is being hacked together and you know held together with wood or random cables that I've gotten Brendan to help me out with and things like that. So we do very much appreciate support coming in from particularly of the monetary kind, but also if you share. If you create a clip, if you tell someone about it, it's that also helps a lot.
Absolutely.
So that is the value for value model that we run. All right. The last couple of things I wanted to bring up was the actual books I read, and then probably maybe some of the things that I did wrong that could have made this my kind of little philosophy venture a little bit more
valuable,
worthwhile, valuable. Yeah.
Yep.
So over this last year, I have read in no particular order the Epictetus Discourses and Selected Writings. That one I actually relatively enjoyed. I thought that one was a decent read, just Stoic philosophy. I've already talked about Heidegger. I've already talked about Beyond Good and Evil. Leviathan by Thomas Hobbes. It's sort of about the state and the church and where kind of power comes from. Who gets to decide what is ethical and what is not ethical, I guess. And he basically has an argument about how the Leviathan, this kind of king type figure, is the one who should have this power and why it should be this king type person. Still kind of hard to decipher. It's written in this old English, and yeah, I didn't take anything too amazing from that book. What else did I have? I had Reasons and Persons. I've bitched about that plenty of times.
Yep.
You heard me. And funnily enough, so this is actually the book that I wanted, and this is getting to why I'm definitely at fault a little bit for my kind of negativity, my disappointment from this experience, because this is the kind of things that I imagined I would be reading. I imagined I'd be reading kind of well put together, coherent arguments that flow from one thing to the next, that explore every little nook and cranny and stamp out arguments like there's no tomorrow.
Yep.
And he did that. He did that in this book, and fair play to him. But it just got to this point where it was like, I don't see the point in this. There's no the deeper truth is not being revealed to me. I'm not becoming enlightened from this. I feel there's moments where I've learnt deep truths about the world with regards to, I don't know, interactions between males and females, about my own insights into why I'm kind of unhappy and suffering, into, I don't know, the benefit of things which I can't particularly explain, but, exercise seems to make me feel good somehow, and there's a whole bunch of reasons for that, but I've found kind of deep truth from that. I didn't get it from this, unfortunately. Okay. But this was the book that you expected to do that. All the others would be like, and maybe if I had been willing to spend a year on it instead of the kind of 3 or 4 months that I did, maybe I would have gotten something more. This was another one, a decent one, René Descartes' Meditations on First Philosophy,
which was quite short. This one,
yeah, very short book. This was, I think it was like 60 pages. And what I took from this, which I actually did think was really kind of philosophical in a way, which was starting off with the process of thinking deeply, which was, okay, I'm going to eliminate what could potentially be false, or what could be misleading. So, I think my senses are 100%, I think this is the truth, the real world, but what's the difference between this exact moment right now and me when I'm in a dream? Because when I'm in a dream, I still think and feel like I have senses. So, okay, my senses can be misleading. I'll eliminate them. What is kind of beneath my senses? What can I be sure of beneath that? Now, the things that he ended up coming up with, which was a kind of certainty in God, I didn't particularly, I tried the same kind of maneuvers that he was saying, the process, and I didn't come up with that.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed the kind of elimination before reconstructing what he thought to be, reality from the ground up, the base truths. I did enjoy that. So that I would actually say
was a good one.
A good philosophy book that I think showed the process really nicely, for sure. And then the last one I'm reading at the moment is Soren Kierkegaard's Either/Or, or either or. And once again, it's kind of just random stuff. Like he was talking about how, and I'm about halfway through, and so far he's talked about why the Don Juan by Mozart is the kind of best music ever, and he touches upon really interesting points. He kind of touches upon, okay, what is a better method of kind of communication or language? Is it music? Is it spoken word? Is it writing? And he kind of dives into what the differences between them are, but once again, it just seems it doesn't seem really well put together. It kind of seems like it's just blah, just random shit getting chucked out.
You know what would make a really good philosophy book, and that's like what I was just quickly Googling was Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, which I wouldn't have thought that, I wouldn't have initially said that's philosophy, but thinking it through, yes, it is philosophy in a way,
think that is, yeah.
But just with an almighty amount of practicality and direct experience. So the story there, but I would say like that's a fantastic book, and I guess like Man's Search for Meaning, for those who haven't read it, is quite tiny. And if you want to not read the second section of the logotherapy, it's even tinier. And you can extract so much good information from these couple of short stories. And Victor basically talking through the 3 stages of going from like being a new prisoner to accepting it to essentially freedom, right? And he just explains his own personal story of going through that in World War II. And it's amazing. Like there's so much stuff that you can pull out. It's so easy to extract as well in the way that he presents it. I'd go for all intents and purposes. And he was a doctor, right? Man, great philosopher in the way that he has thought through, was able to kind of peel back emotion and see the reality of humanity. Amazing. I guess that's kind of my expectation of other books as well, that they would be able to do that. And I guess some of the ways, or some of the things that you've explained there, I'd go, I don't think they've done that. I don't think they've truly peeled it back enough to be able to really explain it so concisely and precisely to go, okay, now, again, maybe you do need 1,000 pages to be able to explore every single permutation of this and that. But I just go, I don't know, is that all too difficult? Is it like, am I really going to bother that? The answer is no.
Yeah.
And so I let others, I let others go and do that 1,000-page reading, extract, here's the 13 things that you have to like blink list style of information, just pull it out and then pull it together kind of like the way that a Viktor Frankl book is written of Man's Search for Meaning, where you're incorporating learnings with real life stories, with practicality, and then you're like, okay, cool. I get this. I get it very, very cleanly and easily. Yeah. Awesome. That's good for me.
This kind of reminds me of kind of one of the things in Reasons and Persons, which was, what is a person's goal, kind of objective in life? And you can have the self-interest theory. It is, the best life for me is the life that goes best for me. And then you can have others, which are, the best life is the one that that goes best for me and for others, and kind of includes other things like that. All I can say is like the best life for me is not going to include me finishing Kierkegaard's Either and Or. I'm kind of like officially, this is kind of a therapy session for me as well, being like,
yep, I'm not going to.
I've kind of finished the goal in a way. I actually thought this was the 6th book, but this is actually the 7th now. So I'm kind of reading something I don't particularly need to.
Nice.
So yeah, this is kind of like a self-therapy session for myself as well.
So ultimately, are you going to pick up another philosophy book?
Look, yes, I think in my general readings, I'm sure I will come across another one at some point. But the question will be, will I continue to read something that I'm not enjoying, that I'm not getting anything out of, because I think there is something because other people have told me there's something deep truth in here. Because, the general life advice, well, not life advice, but the general feeling you can get from just being alive for 20 or 30 years is, philosophy, deep truths contained within, but it'll be kind of hard to read. I'm not as confident of that as I once was.
One thing that just popped into my mind as well, right? So imagine these books are written 110, 120 years ago plus, right? Big, long time ago.
Most of the ones I've read have been older.
Right? So like
only
and
recent
older, right?
persons
And people go, hey,
recent.
there's some great cracking philosophy that's under here that will revolutionize the way you think about particular things. Wonderful. Now you can go and read the originals as well. But by the way, if they were really great, and probably like to say they are great, but there's a level of expectation that you set just with any book or with anything that you do that, this has been said to be a great book. I'm probably going to learn so many things from this. So one is maybe we are coming with the perspective of this should be great, and if it is not anything but like pretty top, you go, okay, well, this is actually kind of crap based on your perception. Maybe it would have been slightly different if you went, okay, I'm not expecting to learn anything here. Let's just see what it has. Maybe it would have been rated slightly higher. Now, there's just going to be that type of perspective. So that's one thing. But the other one that I think of is these books, let's just say, were great or have picked up a lot of followers or information have been spread. Perhaps there's a few things, a few of the key wisdom pieces that came out of these philosophy books that made it their way into other books, into other means, into mainstream media in whatever way. And you might have already consumed that idea, that wisdom, somewhere along the journey, right? I can imagine that if I read Ryan Holiday's Obstacle is the Way, and then let's say all of Ryan Holiday's books, and then I went and read the originals, like, the key ones, I don't know, percentage-wise, but maybe 50% of the things that are really key in the wisdom that I might be able to obtain, I might have already taken as part of reading these other books. And perhaps maybe people might have done that, inadvertently. They're not trying to, but perhaps you've read a few other things, self-help books, other places where those authors have picked up other ideas and a few others from those key philosophy books. So when you go back and read them, you might go, okay, this wasn't as interesting. Maybe I already knew that piece. And so what's remaining is kind of like the stuff that's just not even that great at all. So you're going to go, okay, maybe it reduces that value. Now, I don't know how much that really translates, because other part of me goes, do people like, does all of that wisdom really come out and get spread across? Okay, maybe not.
And it could have just been wisdom that was for a particular time. It was worth...
But what was that book that you read? I think it was Gulliver's Travels or one of those ones where it was like around the world in 80 days. Where I remember in your book review, you said that like it might have been a really good book at the time, but now you were a little bit like,
Man, I probably said that for
a few of those books.
Of things, yeah. It could have very well been one of those ones, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so I think that it could also be that. It could also be that some of these books are so old as well that...
Yeah, well, those two that you mentioned were kind of the first travel adventure books in a way, kind of fantasy mixing with travel. So, yeah, I could see myself have saying that, yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. Okay. So the last thing I wanted to just touch upon was what kind of like advice that I would have maybe given to myself, or some reasoning, some kind of steel manning of the books, and saying, okay, how could I have made this better? And this is maybe why I slipped up. So one of the things, just don't be afraid to drop a book. I should have dropped a bunch of these. I'm still kind of reading the Kierkegaard one because I'm still kind of, but it's just this next section, the
good stuff will be the next
diary
bit.
of his seducer. This is where the real meat and potatoes is. And it's like, man, you just got to get over your hang up over that, or you're in for some real pain.
Okay. Yep.
Another one that I didn't do was reading kind of the intro of the book. So all of these, most of them would have some sort of, a lot of them have been translated, and then a lot of them also have an introduction by an editor of some sort. Now, this is where I went, what's the point of a book if I'm just going to get someone else's interpretation of it for me to try and understand it? Surely it should be able to speak for itself. Maybe this is where it's, okay, no, you have to treat this like you have to treat it as a liberal arts degree. If you want to read Heidegger, You have to
learn all these other things
learn
around it.
all of these other particular techniques and, you know, what this word means. And when he says this, he doesn't actually mean this. He means this. It's like, well, okay, but am I reading Heidegger anymore? Or am I reading what random YouTuber who's deciphering Heidegger for me?
Yeah.
Is that what I'm reading? In which case it's like, well, why isn't this guy touted as the best philosophy person ever?
Yeah, exactly.
Not
And it kind of makes me reflect on the fact that, you know, with the Mere Mortals book reviews, it isn't we don't do the book reviews so you don't go and read the book. That's not what the book reviews are for. I think the book reviews, and I've started to finish them off with this way, is would I recommend you to go read them or not, type of deal. Because of the time period that we get to discuss them, it's a little bit around the themes. You get an idea of what the book is about, whether we kind of enjoyed it or not. And if you've been listening to us, maybe you have a bit of an idea of, okay, if they liked it, maybe I will like it. Or maybe you go, oh, he read something and it was completely dissing out fitness and I hate fitness, so maybe I'll like it. It's more of a, you should go and read it or not read it and make your own decisions and get your own learnings.
For sure. For me, it's more of a dispelling of perhaps, you know, that expectations that you come into it. You know, this is kind of what I interpreted it as. And so maybe you can come into something like the Aeneid and go, oh, okay, maybe it's not going to be this epic saga that I was expecting in the sense of Lord of the Rings. And it's actually going to be something, you know, a little bit different. It's going to have different themes and a way of presenting things.
Yeah, but that direct translation of, Kierkegaard or whatever else, pick your philosopher by somebody else, and then you're having to learn through that person. Yeah, it's kind of like, well, was it the original, you know, author didn't do a good enough job that it needs to be like taught by somebody else, or what are they, as you say, the great philosopher then?
Yeah, definitely. Another thing I kind of did wrong was I definitely wasn't reading most of these when I was at my most alert. As I go through the day, my ability to, I suppose, ingest and think deeply decreases for me. I'm definitely less alert late in the evening than I am at 11 a.m.
Sure.
11 a.m. is kind of like peak learning time, which is why I learned German then. That's you know, bang right in, like I want to get the most out of this as I can. So, you know, it's a bit on me that I was trying to read these things, these hard kind of technical books in a way, and at a point where I was not doing them myself a favor by doing that. So that's another one. You know, as you mentioned, it could just be straight up pure smarts, and you just I don't got it. I don't got it, man. I do want to add, even though, you know, we jokingly say we're idiots, and I in particular say this all the time, in many ways you could point at me and say, okay, look, you know, he got the ducks of his high school. Okay, he graduated as an engineer, he got a bachelor's degree and a decent GPA. I'm not that stupid in particular 60. In particular aspects. So for me, it felt like, okay, whatever my IQ is, it's not. It shouldn't be, you know, more than 60 points away from whatever these people are at in their lives. I feel like that's a manageable gap. I feel like because have you heard that kind of theory where if you're too far on either side, you just cannot communicate, and you kind of need a bridging person to be able to get that to there and then that to there. I don't feel like I need that bridging person, but maybe, you know, who knows? Maybe I'm overestimating my own IQ. But yeah, those are my kind of recommendations. So if I like it, if you're someone like me, kind of, you know, and if you're attracted to the podcast, I'm kind of guessing that you might have some similarities or at least some sympathies. I'd be very curious to know what your sum up of philosophy is, and if you can do a better job than I have at kind of
or advices if you've gone and read some of the really difficult reads out there, the philosophy books which are touted as being the greatest, and go, oh, actually I did this and this actually really helped out to understand them, and maybe we're missing that.
All entirely possible. All I will say is that I've been disappointed.
Been disappointed.
And it's Heidegger's fault. Fuck you, Heidegger. And also, I should add in that my worst subject at high school was English. So, the interpretation of things, reading of things, I definitely have more of a mathematical brain. So this kind
could be something like that as well.
Yeah, maybe you need to be somewhat poetical in nature to understand philosophy. I wouldn't have thought that was the case, but...
Well, just imagine it, maybe it's kind of like the case of, could we really judge what the best music is, what the best song is? Like, there's no way, really, I wouldn't be able to at all. Like, I don't know anything when it comes to the technical aspect.
Too far out of my realm.
Exactly. So maybe while we don't think it, maybe it is. So that's the only way that I'll steel man this idea. But yeah, for the most part, fuck philosophy.
Fuck you. Yeah. Okay, good. All right. I think that's a perfect place to end it for today. So... like we mentioned, sending in a Boostagram or some sort of message to us of your thoughts on philosophy, on reading philosophy books. I would be very intrigued to know if there's a glaring mistake that I've made, if there's just some sort of insight, if my perception of what philosophy is all wrong. It'd be helpful to know those sorts of things. So
yes, please dish out some hateful comments to us as to why we might have said something about your favorite philosophy book and why we're saying it's so crap.
Buffoon.
Yeah. But I am willing to bet that the most mere mortalites out there wouldn't have that commentary. I don't think that most people would say that they would support some of these philosophy books.
Look, Peter in the chat is, from what I can tell, a pretty smart guy. He seems to have a very good grasp on most things, and he's right in predicting many things. He was mining Bitcoin back in 2013, sort of stuff. So there's and he also has struggled with philosophy books. I can tell. So he said he's got reasons and persons at home, and after my review, just went, I probably don't.
Might not read that.
So look,
saving people some time, man.
Maybe I am. But yeah, that's. I think we'll call it right there. Juan, anything you want to add?
No, that's all. Again, you already mentioned the Valley, but yes, if you can share this podcast, whether it's this one, whether it's me and Moral's book reviews, whether it's a Valley for Valley, there are other podcasts out there. Feel free to share it with somebody who you think might enjoy it, and that does definitely help us as well. So
for sure.
For now, me and Mortalites, thank you very much for joining in. One out.
Current out.
Boy. Good.
Very good. Very, very good. Very good. Very good. Oh my lord. I'm gonna go after this and pull out the thumbnail. Not thumbnails. What do you call those things that you put in books? Book tags.
Bookmarkers?
Bookmarks. Go pull out the bookmarks so I don't even have the thought of reading more Heidegger. Just go straight up.
Goodbye, Heidegger.
I think I've read enough though.
Wait, Heidegger or Kierkegaard?
Sorry, Kierkegaard. You're correct. Yep. And I still feel like I can kind of
just throw it out the window, man.
Well, I still feel like I've read enough of it that I can kind of do a book review on it as well, just to provide something. I've had enough kind of like little mini insights from reading it to go, okay.
I get what it's kind of is.
Yeah. But anyone who's in the chat and feels like chatting more, I'm going to be on Discord for the next half an hour-ish as I'm editing. So if you feel like joining me, jump in there and say hello. Other than that, I'm going to turn the screen off now. Yeah, thanks for... Peter says this is my favorite episode of all time. Dang. All
Damn.
Right. Well, thank you very much, Peter. That's very kind of you. And peace out.
Thanks, folks. Is this German?